Uh, uh, oh, Aniket, wake up, wake up. It's the race is over. We have to
What
reveal.
happened?
Yeah, yeah. Oh, sorry. Hello, 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 everybody. We are back on the Sports is Sadachi podcast to review Suzuka. As you can see, the race was so boring. We didn't wake up. We just woke up, 2 days later. So, yeah, after all the hype at Melbourne, at Albert Park, when the Red Bulls had reliability problems, space issues, Ferrari did a 1-2 after like what 2 years. Yeah, we are back to your regularly scheduled programming of uh, Max Verstappen winning a race. So yeah, I mean, yeah, what happened, Aniket? What are we back to the boring F1 season?
I think we spoke about it during the review of Albert Park, right? That Verstappen would like to come back with a vengeance, and that's what exactly happened. He went out, got pole, then dominated the race, and that's what she wrote. So that's what we expected, to happen after the reliability issues they faced. The only reason why Red Bull did not win Melbourne was because of their reliability issues. Otherwise, they would have probably won that race as well. So
Yeah,
we saw Verstappen finish, in a dominating fashion, and this time Perez also kept his cool, got into a P2 position, which very close to Verstappen, and then solidified it in the race without being overtaken. So Perez
yeah,
also had a good race. So when both of them have races with no issues, then it's very hard for any other team to compete with them at that level. So it's just what we expected because Red Bull was always going to be strong at Suzuka, and
yeah. I think that
they got their
Suzuka
1-2.
Suzuka plays to Red Bull strength, right? Like it's a very fast track. The Red Bull is
Yeah.
a rocket on streets, high speed corners. Uh, I mean, I think we had more tired deck than expected this time, but I mean, they were just too fast for tired deck to matter, right? So yeah, but behind obviously Ferrari was 3-4, which is it looks to Ferrari looked to be a very very solid second team. Like nobody can get past them, right? Red Bull is a comfortable first, and at least last year we used to see Ferrari, Mercedes, and towards the end McLaren, Aston Martin in the beginning, all jostling,
Yeah.
for the best team after Red Bull position. 2022 also, I mean, Ferrari was probably even better than Red Bull this season, but reliability meant sometimes they're not in the second best team. But Fred Vasseur seems to have, maybe it's too early to say, as a Ferrari fan, you have PTSD from all those seasons. But Fred Vasseur looks to have finally fixed all those, strategy problems. And
Yep.
um, obviously, they know the car is not as fast as Red Bull, but they're faster than everybody else. And, they're ready to pounce when Red Bull makes a mistake like in Melbourne. So I guess is that what we see in season? So Ferrari won to in Singapore because the winning team never wins in Singapore. I don't know what you guys are doing down there.
Yeah, it does seem that Ferrari, are definitely the best of the rest in terms of being second in this season's championship. So I would say that Fred Vasseurs definitely brought in something there which was lacking the previous seasons in terms of getting the strategy right, getting the car right as well.
Yeah.
So I think they have a good building block for 2025 with the pace they've shown and also towards the new regulations in 2026. So it does seem that with Leclerc at least there for the next few years, they have someone who is stable enough to lead that team as well as, take it into the new regulations as well. Although Science has, recently been outperforming him. So,
Yeah, Sainz is
but
like a
it,
man.
yeah, Science is definitely, getting a very good seat next season, or that's what we should think should happen. So he's
It
definitely
should,
playing up to that.
right? It'll be
He's
really,
definitely
really
playing
criminal
up to
if
that high
Sainz
standard which he has set for himself.
yeah, it'll be really criminal if Sainz ends up at, I don't know, Sauber,
Yeah.
right?
I don't think he
Like,
will after this performance. I think a top team, be it Red Bull or Mercedes or
yeah,
I don't McLaren doesn't have space. So at first he goes to Aston Martin, which is still not bad because Aston Martin reportedly want Adrian Newey also on board. So it's
right.
gonna be a good. I think the science chatter will just keep going on and on. It's probably gonna be some of the most interesting topic.
Yeah,
One of the most interesting topics that we'll probably talk about as and when the season progresses because there's nothing to talk about on track. So it's just the off track matter
Exactly.
which we
Yeah.
are going to discuss more about. So, good race for Sainz again and Charles Leclerc, who completely went with I think, a different strategy to his teammate, but
Yeah.
still, they did not
Yeah,
mess that strategy up, and yeah,
Mhm. Ferrari really showing that they fixed all their tire tech issues, right? Like even in 2022, when one could argue that they were faster than Red Bull before, I don't know, their upgrades or more like downgrades during the car in 2022, and their obviously crap strategy. But Ferrari had tire tech issues right from the beginning of the new regulations, and it looks like they may have fixed it for good because doing a one stopper in that Suzuka race with such tire tech is just amazing.
yeah. I mean, we saw Mercedes also tried to do it, but they failed in that sense. So, does seem that Ferrari have done something with the car this year, which is helping them in terms of
Yeah,
in terms of less tired egg. So that's good for their long term strategy and for the next races as well. So because
right.
they can play now two different cards if they want.
Yeah, totally.
So
Because if you see
I'll
the starting grid,
mm,
Leclerc was where was he? Was eighth on the grid, right?
yeah,
And he finished the race fourth, and he was just 6 seconds behind Sainz. And a pit
yeah,
stop at Suzuka is 23 seconds, right? If he was 30 seconds, behind Sainz, if he was 30 seconds behind Sainz, he would have finished P9 behind Lewis Hamilton.
mm,
And that
yeah.
one pit completely changes fortunes.
Exactly. And he was able to maintain good pace as well throughout that one stopper. So
Yeah, yeah,
that
that's
shows the
pretty.
strength of Ferrari's car as well. So it's good. It's good, as we said, for their outlook in the next few races as well. So I think China will also be a good race for Ferrari. So it'll be interesting. I mean, I think we're going back to China now after, as in we'll talk about China probably in one of our next episodes, but it'll be good
Right.
to see China back on the calendar again. It's been a while
Yeah,
since
it's been a long time. We're going back to China
I
after
think,
5 years.
5 years exactly, right? So that'll be an interesting race. And I think Ferrari again, good race. If we move on to say McLaren, McLaren was supposed to
Yeah.
have kind of a stronger race than they showed, but they did finish fifth and I think seventh or eighth. I'm not sure. Fifth and eighth
Uh,
probably.
fifth and eighth, yeah.
Fifth
Oscar
and
was
eighth,
just
yeah.
a second and a half behind George.
So I think we discussed in the last preview of Suzuka, right, that they were supposed to be good this race because this is one of the better
Right.
tracks that they have for this season.
Yeah, and they
I
were
mean, which will
they were
suit
double
their
podium
strengths.
last year.
They won the
They were two and three
double
last
podium last year, correct?
year. Yeah, yeah.
So I think something went amiss from McLaren side because this was a race where they had the best shot at another podium, but I think it's clear that Ferrari is still a step ahead of them at this point.
Right.
But
Yeah.
another strong race in terms of them being the third best team, clear third best team on the F1 grid this year. And Norris is just proving that he's the man capable of leading the team
Right.
for the next few years as well. He's getting those results consistently now, and he's outperforming his teammate. I would say, like most of the times, albeit Piastri being a little less, I mean, little less experienced than him, but
No, that is true.
nonetheless,
But Piastri's rookie season was so successful. Even won a sprint race. So
yeah,
many people were speculating that he might be better than Lando this season. So props to Lando for just coming out,
yeah.
starting the season in a storming fashion. He has been clearly faster than Piastri every race. Piastri hasn't, has had no chance to go anywhere near him. So yeah, it's a very good comeback from Lando after all the doubters were suggesting that maybe McLaren's future is Piastri, and maybe if somebody wants to take Lando, they should let him take them. Because Mercedes seem
Yeah,
to be interested in Lando. So
I think there were some who doubted that long-term extension also he signed with McLaren. I mean, thinking that it would be like too soon to commit or too foolish to commit this quickly.
right,
In case another seat opens up at Red Bull or Mercedes or something.
yeah,
But it does seem that McLaren have got their car right at least for this regulation. So this season and next season will definitely be be good for them in terms of that. So and 2026 is where they can actually show the true colors. So hopefully they are focused towards that car, and then we'll see how that pans out because with Lando and Oscar they have a pairing that will kind of go on for the next 4 to 5 years easily. because at the
Yeah,
rate which both are performing.
yeah. Lando and Oscar feels like the Charles and Carlos pairing right now.
Hmm.
Unless McLaren decides to replace Oscar Perez with Fernando Alonso in 2026.
Uh, no way they're going back to Fernando again for a third stint. So yeah, and but if you come now to, I would say, Mercedes
No,
again
I think
another.
before, if you talk about Fernando, another impressive race from him in the Aston Martin. Like, I mean, Lance Stroll, yeah, whatever, P what, P12, no give a shit. But I think Fernando is really showing what that car is capable of right now. Like Aston Martin started last season also, like they started very well last season, they're winning podiums. But then by the end of the season, they completely fell apart, and Ferrari, Mercedes, McLaren, all of them were ahead.
Yeah.
But this season, they're right up there with the big boys. Aston Martin was P6. Um, I mean, yeah, I mean, I think the car was a bit off on the pace compared to McLaren. Uh, he finished 15 seconds behind Lando. But I would still say a good race from Fernando. And maybe, if the rumors of Papa Stroll being bought out are true, maybe we'll see two good drivers at Aston Martin in the future.
Or
Uh,
maybe Fernando just walks away after the season to, I don't know, Mercedes, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
But
even if Fernando walks away, they can still get two good drivers. Right? If Lance is gone, I mean, they can get
yeah,
Carlos Sainz. They can get somebody else. I don't know, a Checo or I don't know, Max
yeah.
Verstappen. Uh,
But yeah, I mean, Alonso, he's just outperforming that car by himself. As you know, that car is
yeah,
not supposed to be not supposed to be where it is, but it's
yeah,
just Fernando's skill level that's so intense that it's taking the car to, like, top seven positions in the
yeah.
on
That, that
for
wily old
every
fox,
race which he's racing at.
still has it in him. Eh?
Yeah, I think he said in the press conference as well that mostly the work is being done by him and not the car, or something along those lines. If I had to paraphrase, so it is for teams to take notice of him because he's out of contract for next season. So Mercedes and Red Bull definitely will keep an eye on him depending on what they decide to do. Even
Right.
because even for one season, if they bring someone like Fernando's caliber, in, he can do a job for them.
Yeah,
So
just imagine the stuff he can do behind the scenes, right? Like even if he's not winning races, we
yeah,
saw how we saw how Aston Martin went from strength to strength, right? With Vettel and now Alonso, senior driver can like that can really, because Lance Stroll, let's be honest, he's doing jack shit over there.
hmm,
But I think that's at least that's one good thing about Aston Martin hiring is that even if they're stuck with you know half the team not being able to do anything, at least the other half they have good drivers. They had Sebastian Vettel before was a very very intelligent driver again. Now they have Fernando Alonso. So that is setting up them well for the future.
yeah,
I mean, similar to how Mercedes back in the day had Michael Schumacher, who I mean he didn't win a race, but I think him and Ross Brawn really laid a great foundation for Mercedes'
yeah.
8 year into the sport. And coming to Mercedes,
Good segue.
what on earth is going on? It's amazing to see it as a Ferrari fan, but dude, really, they were P7 and P9.
Again,
George Russell was 45 seconds behind Max Verstappen. I mean, almost 46, so 45.9. So like 46 seconds behind Max Verstappen. It was a 53 lap race, so he was losing close to a second every lap. And I mean, Hamilton was not far behind; he was only 2.5 seconds behind George. So basically, uh, both the Mercedes drivers were losing what 7, 8 tenths per lap uh, compared to Max Verstappen. And even if you compare them to Carlos Sainz, George was 25 seconds behind Carlos.
yeah.
This is like a good half a second slower than the Ferrari every lap, which is not good. I mean, half a second might not be much in real life, but in Ferrari, in Formula One, it's an eternity, right?
I think Mercedes are sandbagging.
Since it all
They're
started, dude.
sandbagging in reality now, unfortunately. So I think they're a team in turmoil. It's like, I mean, let's not hide the fact away that they are a team in turmoil. They don't know what they're doing with the car. They have
Yeah,
senior engineers, but they've still not figured out these regulations. And there's only one more year left in these regulations, so they're
yeah.
basically
And
running out of time to figure out things.
it's funny they keep saying, "Oh, we know we have more in the car. We know we have more in the car, dude." This is the third season of these new regulations, right? Like, what do you mean you know you have more in the car? Every team knows
Yeah.
that. Even Alpine knows them more in the car, but Alpine is last and they're not first, right?
I think it's just Toto giving out optimistic statements to keep the motivation in the team at higher than what it currently is. But it's clear to see, right? They've not figured out the car yet. I mean, from track to track, they say that their things are getting better, but then things obviously do not get better. It's not like they are finishing in the top five also nowadays. So. Uh, this race, I mean, the strategy was proved to be wrong because they tried to do a one stop. The tires didn't last, and they had to go to a two stop then, and that's what made them drop position. So maybe if they
Yeah.
had got the strategy right, they could have probably finished, say, a sixth or a seventh, sixth and seventh or something like that.
So
But
again, did both drivers do one stop or was it just George?
I think they both tried a one stopper, but they ended up doing a two stop in the end.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah. Otherwise, if they had I mean, if they started on a two stop and handled it according to a two stop, then probably they could have managed the race better. But
Right.
I
Yeah.
think they made the
Yeah.
call later to go to, say, a plan B, as we would say in F1. So the strategy team is also like kind of in the same boat as the car itself, wherein both are not functioning properly. So
Yeah.
uh, it's going to take a while, as as Lewis said, the car is still bad. So I think we can trust Lewis on that. And if Lewis can't get the car right, there's
Yeah.
something really wrong with the car. So
No, what doesn't make sense to me is that last season they ended the season P2, right? Mercedes, you know, uh, really ended the season very strong. They picked Ferrari to P2 because Ferrari also, if you remember, had a good comeback in the second half, right?
mhm.
Because Aston Martin was taking both to the cleaners, um, and Ferrari and Mercedes were like nowhere. I mean, Aston Martin was clear second at the beginning of the
Yeah,
season, but then both made strides. Aston Martin kind of fell apart, and Ferrari looked set to have the P2 spot back to them, and Mercedes came from nowhere. Lewis started getting podiums. Lewis was just amazing at the end of the season, at the rear end of the season.
yeah,
I mean, I guess Vegas where Ferrari was very good, but in general, Mercedes is very very strong in the second half of last year after the break, and we thought maybe they finally figured these regulations and the car and all that stuff. And then this season, I don't know what the hell they're doing on the winter, but it's like they're back to 2022. The only difference is the car's not bouncing. Uh,
yeah. I mean, whatever updates or whatever aerodynamic changes that they've tried in the winter, then is clearly not working. Or at least the simulation that they've done is proven to
yeah,
be wrong. So
they
it
probably
it
should
it
have,
does seem.
because it seems they finally figured it out, right?
I mean, they've been trying to figure it out since 2022, since the zero pods concept, which blew
Yeah,
everyone's
but
mind away,
they
thinking,
pods, right? They have nice full fat side pods now, and they don't work.
it's a struggle. It's going to be a struggle for them. I think it's sad for me to be a Lewis fan and watching them at this point, at the lowest. Which, I mean, they've never been this low. I think 2022 was still a better start to the season. I remember, and this is probably been their worst start to a season since
I mean,
one of those 2013 or
2022.
2012 years.
Uh, do you think this wasn't 22?
I think 22 they still were getting some kind of results in the beginning. I have not compared the results in the first 4 5 races to this, but with the expectations from this car, I'm
Right.
thinking
Yeah.
that they finished 2022 with a very 2023 with second place in the constructors and lead,
Very
and
strong.
if they can continue that some momentum towards this year, so the expectations were there, and the way they've come out the season being absolutely flat is like very confusing to me.
Yeah, because last season, towards the end, we saw Lewis very, very optimistic, right? I mean, he knew they were not as fast as Red Bull, but they're very optimistic that they're going to be a solid P2, or at the worst fighting for P2. But I mean, it's like they're fighting for more like P4 now with Aston Martin.
Yep.
Yeah, and yeah, I guess behind these guys, I mean, yeah, Yuki had a good race. Finished P10, got a point in his home race. Um, Haas missed on the points, but again, I guess a strong performance from Haas again. Um, 11th and 13th, so they were kind of the best of the best. I mean,
Yeah,
after
behind
yeah,
behind Sonoda. Yeah.
yeah, behind Sonoda. But then, yeah, I think behind the usual suspects, Cake, Alpine. Um, yeah, the only interesting part of the race was we saw the crash at the beginning. Uh, we saw
Daniel
Albon with
Ricciardo can't get anything right at this point. Poor guy.
man,
And Williams
poor
have
guy.
to. Williams can't get a car ready. I mean, what do they need to have a
Yeah,
car ready at
let's
this
let's
point?
let's talk about Williams. Let's talk about Williams
Yeah.
because this is hilarious. So last race in Australia, it was it Australia when they took Sargent out of the car. That's Australia, right? Right.
Yeah.
So Australia, one of the free practice sessions, right? Alex Albon brings his car into the wall, and Williams are basically like, "Hey, we can't get this car ready before qualifying. So, sorry, Logan Sargent, you are carless for the race and qualifying, right?" So Alex Albon steps into Logan Sargent's car. I mean, they basically, I guess, reassigned the cars, right? So Logan Sargent's car became Albon's, and Albon's Sargent's entire car. And then,
Hmm.
so if you look at the timeline difference, they flew Albon's, or rather Logan Sargent's car, back to UK from Australia, right? They flew the car back, and then they repaired it at the factory, right?
And flew it back
Got it,
to Japan.
flew it back to Japan, because F1 is having its races in different countries because of sustainability, I guess. But we saw, they flew the car back to Japan, and they gave this car to Logan Sargent now, and they gave this car to Logan Sargent, and Logan was like, "Okay, hey, finally I have a car now," and Albon was actually driving Logan Sargent's car, right, this race. And what happens? Albon wins Logan Sargent's car. I mean, Logan Sargent win. Remember, Logan Sargent
Logan
win
Sargent
his.
himself had like an incident in practice, right?
Yeah, he had an instant practice too. So they were, rushing to repair that car too, right? They barely got the car ready for qualifying, and
Yeah.
then the happens, and I think somebody clipped Albon in the back, and Albon's in the wall along with Danny Rick, and now they've flown their car back to back to the UK, which takes like whatever 15 hours or whatever from Japan, and where's the next race? Shanghai. So they're again flying that damn car from the UK halfway across the world again to Shanghai, which is basically next to Japan for all intents and purposes. Um, and it's not going to rush because it's only just it's a 2 week gap. I guess Williams is very happy that Shanghai was not in the next consecutive weekend
Oh yeah, for
after
sure.
Suzuka, because they're very close. F1 might as well be like, oh, these two countries are so close to each other. Let's just have successive weekends, like they do with
Yeah.
in some European races. So Williams will be thanking the stars. F1 didn't do that, but now, and if you remember, before the season started in Bahrain, James Vowles told the media that they don't have a third chassis ready, but they'll have the
Only
third
in
chassis
yeah,
near, Australia. And in Australia, the car got banned. So they're like, oh, we'll have it ready by, what is it,
China.
Suzuka? Yeah, China. And now they're like, oh, now it's going to be ready by Miami. I
Yeah.
mean, if drivers keep bringing these cars, and remember, this eats into the cost cap. We're not in an era of unlimited money anymore, right? This eats into their cost cap. And for Williams, every dollar, I mean, they have rich investors now, they have a hedge fund running them. But every dime is important because of the cost cap. They can't afford to, waste a few $1 million just repairing cars because the drivers couldn't keep it on track. I mean, I guess Albon's crash this week is excusable, but both Sargent and Albon's crashes in free practice sessions in Melbourne and Suzuka were just unnecessary.
Yep. I
Yeah,
think
what
it
do you think?
was not Albon's fault at this during for this crash. So I
Sure,
mean
but the thing is too
the
were
blame
right.
has to be on Ricardo, but unfortunately it's on Williams's cost cap, which is what it counts,
Yeah,
which is what counts. So I mean I would say just skip China to Williams. Just skip the race. It's not gonna hurt you. Just skip it.
yeah. It's not like you're getting
Go
points
back, chill,
anyway.
enjoy the sights of Shanghai. Come back
Yeah,
fresh for the next one.
it's not like you're gaining points anyway, right? I mean, the car is shit on the straights this year, so it's not
Exactly.
like Alex
Just don't
Albon
risk your car again for another crash.
Yeah,
Just take it
exactly.
off. Take the race off. Give your team an entire paid time off. Okay, let them roam around China.
Just make them fix the car and go to Miami.
Exactly.
So yeah, I guess. Yeah, I
Any
guess.
sympathy for Valtteri Bottas because he's probably deserves all our sympathy. Poor guy is being made to drive a green-colored steak car with no hope.
Yeah, I think that green color is the only good thing about the car. At least they're different. But did they? Did I forget? I didn't. Uh, I didn't check on the Sauber too much during the race. But did they get their pit stops right this time or no? Or did they
I
again have a
guess
third?
they did because I did not see any incident. So I'm not. I think they did get it right.
They didn't get it right still.
They did. They did. I think they did got it right. They did get it right.
Oh, okay, okay. All right. At least the pit stops are fixed.
Yeah,
For Bottas,
fastest step.
Bottas is cursed with pit stops, right from Mercedes, right?
I feel sorry for him.
Yeah, but I guess Bottas, is in his uh no shits given phase of his
Yeah.
career. He had
Yep.
a very successful career with Mercedes, right?
Yeah.
Won races, won pole positions. I mean, sure, he didn't win the title, but he was literally against one of the greatest drivers of all time, so you can't compare too much. But
Yep.
he put in a very good shift. He did his job. But yeah, I think Bottas, yeah, I mean, hopefully with all this investment, wait, but does he have a contract for next year? I think he's out of contract, right?
I'm not sure. I think he's out of contract. So
Yeah,
I
it's a
depends on
contract.
now with the Audi thing. Who is their priority at this point?
Yeah, maybe with all this investment, maybe he'll get an extension, but I don't know. I
Yeah.
think he'll be happy to retire, man. Finns, yeah, Finns are pretty chill. We saw with Kimi too. They really don't care. Uh, they've had their careers. I mean, I think
I think he's
what?
probably as proud of what he achieved in F1. I mean,
Yeah,
obviously, he
I
would
mean,
have loved to
Bottas.
stay at
Bottas
Mercedes longer, but yeah, it is
Yeah, I
what it
think
is.
Bottas had a yeah, I think Bottas had a pretty successful career, right? He won poles, he won races, even with Lewis in the same car, he won races.
Yeah.
Yeah, you go back to maybe doing those ultra marathons that he does, or
Cycling marathons.
yeah, or posing for calendars butt naked. Yeah, Valtteri
Yep.
Bottas.
But I
I
think
think the
we've
only
covered every team. I think Japan is done and dusted.
I think the only team I feel for is Alpine. Honestly, they if you look at the last few years, right? When was that? 2017,
I wonder if
2018.
Gasly and Albon, sorry, not Gasly and Ocon,
Ocon.
do
Yeah,
they have an exit clause from their contract at the end of this year in case they don't want to continue
yeah,
there?
yeah. But I mean, it's very sad to see what happened in the Alpine, right? What is it? 2018 or sometime. They had this own. We have a plan which got memed
Hmm.
as L plan. They got back Fernando Alonso, who won their only two titles, I guess. Maybe they're
Yeah.
not titled a few decades ago, but in recent past, Fernando has only won their two recent titles, um, going up against again one of the greatest drivers of all time in Michael Schumacher. He literally went toe to toe with them, and Alonso won both titles fair and square. They got back Alonso. They had Danny Rick too after that. Um, I mean, they still seem to improving, right? They used to be P5, P4, P3, kind of around these positions in
I think they
the
got their car horribly wrong this season.
yeah. And then last year they got these two young drivers, right? Gasly and Ocon, were two very talented drivers, two French drivers,
In a French
and
team.
in a French team. They fired that poor guy Otmar last year, and they got somebody from the factory to lead the team. They got and they're like, we mean business now, and this and that and this and that. And they had a few good results last year, but yeah, it just got horribly wrong this season. Yeah, hopefully they get some results, at least a point, right?
Yeah.
I think they're in the
Yep,
Haas,
because
right?
they have two good drivers, and if they waste their
Yeah,
talents, then it won't sit well with F1 fans as well.
yeah, and especially with the open grid we have next season, it'll be hard
Yeah.
to keep to. Maybe Gasly is looking back to get back at Red Bull. I don't know.
Maybe Gasly goes back to RB. So I don't know.
Yeah, But yeah,
Yep.
I guess that's it for Suzuka. Not a lot happened, to be honest.
I don't know how we got 30 minutes of F1 content from Suzuka, but yeah,
Yeah, I
somehow we
guess it's
did.
mostly we're talking about the teams behind the leaders, right? We barely talked a minute about Max. Oh yeah, Max won. We snowed for 30 seconds.
Yeah. But and that brings us to probably the last thing we have to discuss today is
Yeah,
should we actually watch F1 in 2024? Is it interesting? Is there anything happening for F1 fans who want to watch the sport from say this is their first year of watching F1?
right.
Is it worthwhile for them to invest 2 hours on say every other Sunday, in a race and watch something where nothing is happening?
Right.
So
I think we need, obviously 26 is the big regulation change that's coming. But remind me, Aniket, is 2026 just the engine or are we expecting aero change again like 22?
it's more on the engine.
Right, yeah.
It's moving towards sustainability and
Right, right.
all that jazz.
But they're
So
still having the ground effect and all that stuff, right?
yeah,
Yeah, I think, and at least, I mean, obviously, you can call me out if this feels stupid. But I think what we need from F1, I mean, not just the dirty air and all that, but, I mean, this has always happened in F1, right? Like, every time a new regulations happens, one team kind of figures it out. And then, at least in the past, we had refueling and frequent pit stops and all that stuff. So at least, even when Ferrari was dominating from, say, 98 to 2004, like we had Mika win a couple of titles. 2003 went very close between Kimi and Shumi.
yeah,
2000 went very close between Mika and Shumi. And we still had close seasons. Right? It was only 2002 and 4 that was basically a romp home. But I think what F1 needs to do is kind of, you know, obviously, the previous regulations, the Mercy was down, and obviously had its own issues with dirty air, and cars just couldn't follow. But I think we should also. Now, I know this is unpopular, but I think we should bring back refueling. I think there will be ways to make it safe, right? Cars are much safer. Cars are much more fireproof, right? I mean, we saw who was the guy? Roman Grosjean completely come out of a flaming car, which split in half.
yeah.
So F1 cars are way safer. So I think F1 should, maybe look at possibly, um, you know, looking at bringing back refueling because the refueling era gave us some classic races. Remember that one of the, races in the rain when it was a wet race and Schumacher did 4 pit stops and still won the damn race
Mm-hmm.
because that's how they played the strategy. The whole field they probably did 2 or at most 3 pit stops. And here's
Mm.
Michael Schumacher who does 4 pit stops. And remember, pit stops back then, were much more expensive, right? It's not just 23
Yeah.
seconds. You're fueling the car for a good 5, 6 seconds. It's more like you lose 30 seconds when you go to the pit lane. And you do that 4 times a race and you still win the race, right? So I think we need that. And I think the other thing we also need is, I think we need softer tires, right? When you saw what you saw in Melbourne, when Pirelli went with the softest compounds in the set,
Yeah.
the C3, C4, and C5s.
C3.
Yeah. So they went with the three softest compounds, and we saw some, good racing. Even before Max crashed out, we still saw, Ferrari put up a good fight. Because of I think tire deck always makes races more interesting because
Yeah.
right now all we see is, it's. I mean, right now even with all the improvements in car following and all that, it again feels like the Mercedes era when uh, teams and not just Mercedes, right from we stopped refilling, right? Teams just manage tires now, right? Um, because there's no refilling going on. We just manage tires, try to the minimum number of pit stops, and we all, especially with the data, aspect of the sport, we have all optimized on trying to do one pit stop in a race, right? And just there's no refilling, so everybody underfuels their car, does one pit stop, massages their engine, does lyco throughout the race,
It's called
because
there's a term for it now. What they do, I mean, uh, which they use in the race, which are engineers tell the drivers to
yeah, it's lyco,
uh,
lyco,
s-
lift and coast. or
Left
a
and
live.
twist, correct. So that's what, I mean, we see a lot of that in the races as well, when
Yeah,
drivers are not able to give it their full beans and they have to lift and coast, in certain parts of
yeah,
the
exactly.
races.
I think it's all because also I think we also use we use too hard. I mean, because if you have 70 lap race and the hard compound can do 50 laps, and the medium can do 30, there's no, I mean, no team wants to take a risk at all, right? They're like, hey,
Yeah.
a hard compound can do 50 laps, so we start on soft, get some 20 laps out of it, or start on medium, get some 20 laps out, and then everybody puts on the hards around lap 25, and then they just go on that towards the end. And the only time we see a second pit stop is if, say, Max Verstappen or Lewis Hamilton in the front is leading by 30 seconds. Then they take a pit stop to go for fastest lap, and then that's all we see,
Hmm.
right? I mean, and like even with even in the ground effect era, 2022, we started off with cars following very closely, and then because of porpoising, uh, FIA increased the ride height regulations. Ironically, because of Toto's bitching and moaning,
Hmm.
even when other teams figured out, uh, Toto was like, no, no, this is dangerous because Mercedes couldn't figure out how to stop the car bouncing. So then we increased the ride height, and that basically, killed. I think some calculations show that 40% of uh, the gains that were made in 2022 in the new regs were lost because of ride height
Hmm.
increases. Right, so
Hmm.
again made it kind of hard for cars to follow. Like not
Yep.
as bad as 14 to 21, but it's still bad, right? And we just see DRS trains, and that's all about it. So yeah, what do you think? That's what I think. I think we should
Yeah.
possibly bring back refueling and use softer tires. I think the tires right now are too hard for a race. What do you think?
I think softer tire definitely is an option. Refueling might be a far-fetched ideology at this point. I mean, obviously it's more safer at this point, but I think F1 is not going to bring it back unless something drastic had to happen to get it back, because they're very comfortable with cars being fully fueled and going the entire race. So getting refueling means increasing the costs in F1, and FI is trying. I mean, the way F1 is going, they're trying to reduce the costs as much as they can.
Right.
So refueling would be going the opposite direction. So I don't think that's a solution which the FI might consider. But definitely, the cars again cannot follow very closely. So something needs to be looked at from an aerodynamic point of view as well for 2026, in terms of how we used to have cars being able to follow each other so closely back in the V10s era, and
Yeah. We
actually,
didn't, we didn't have DRS at time, right?
and we didn't have DRS at that time. So which means would DRS removed might also be an option, and going back to say conventional cars with rear wings
Yeah, but I
closed.
think with the current cars, if you remove DRS, I think we'll stop seeing any overtakes at all, right?
We
I mean,
will, but
I
I just want to see with
hate
the new
DRS too,
regulation in
but cars are
2026.
the cars are just not built for overtaking. And like also if you look at the V10 era, cars were much smaller, they were more nimble,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And we had more wheel to wheel racing. Right now the car is so big. Like just to see how big the cars are, you just need to look at Monaco, right? Where
yeah, yeah, for sure,
two cars
for
can't even
sure.
go side by side anymore.
Yep. I mean, there are a few solutions as we discussed: refueling, getting back refueling, obviously, and then the tires could be the bigger element in terms of getting the softest compound every race, and having multiple stops per team. That could probably throw a lot of equations into for a
Yeah,
toss.
yeah,
So it might reduce Red Bull's dominance as well on certain tracks. So that may help. Making some kind of rule tweaks that can alter Red Bull's performance, with similar to how they've done with Mercedes in the dash and removing the dash, and some changes which they have brought in. Something
right.
they can do along those lines, and maybe reverse grid is something that they would consider. I don't know.
And I honestly hate that concept.
I mean, if we are very desperate, then we should definitely try a reverse grid concept.
No, I
Just to
think with
spice
reverse
things
grid
up.
team,
It's not going to
I
work
mean
because Verstappen is probably going to overtake all of them in the first 2-3 laps.
no,
So
but I mean no. At that point, what's the incentive to even get pole position, right? I mean,
yeah,
like why would Verstappen even try to get pole? Like every team is trying to go slow, and then what?
I
And
don't know
you,
what will be the the brain behind it in terms of implementing it without any quali, or how. how do we,
Yeah. I like
I
what?
mean,
And then teams won't even exit the pit lane, man. They'll be like, worst case, if nobody comes up pit lane, what? Use that World
yeah,
Championship order. I think, yeah, that's good. Use the World Championship order because Red Bull is at the front, right?
exactly. I mean,
They'll just, yeah,
we're just
I
reaching for
got
ideas. So at this point, there's like something we're trying to pick out and get from the clouds. So
yeah. I think this is a problem
let's
with
see.
F1,
Like,
right? These wacky ideas when
we
easy
saw
ideas
good
are saying,
racing till as as back as just 2 3 years ago in 2021. We saw like two highly competitive drivers fight it out
yeah,
in
I think
more
I
or
think
less
21
equal
is not the
machinery.
exception because I think 21 also it was like, towards the end of the previous regulation era. And, Red Bull had worked for like 8 years to finally catch up to Mercedes.
Yeah,
And, they finally cracked the code. No, but I think even in general, right? Like, I think the FIA form on, there are so many organizations that whoever is responsible for all of this crap. I think sometimes they try too hard to like inject excitement rather than implement simple ideas staring at them in the face, right? Remember, like when was that? I think somewhere in the 2010s. Wow, it's like 10 years ago. But somewhere in the 2010s, we had this ridiculously dumb ass idea about the last race getting double points, right? Like we just completely ruined everything, if you ask me. And
mm.
then now there is additional weekend, these sprint weekends, which again made no sense to me, if you ask me. I say, why we're racing twice to see Verstappen win twice, right? I mean, even otherwise, right? Like the sprints are too short. Everybody just goes on softs or they just go on mediums, and it's again just they're gonna end up doing Lyco because the sprint is generally as long as the a one tire stint, right? So 20 laps or whatever. That's
Yeah,
generally what a soft medium will get you, depending on the tire compound. So you just see teams doing that, and you get four interesting laps, and then you see Lyco. Well, sounds like an F1 race to me. You see four interesting laps, and then whether it's Lewis or Max or Leclerc, they just start to pull away, and then you have nothing happening towards the end of the race, and then everybody does a
yeah,
2 second pit stop, and you're done, right? Yeah, I think we
yep.
definitely need more action. I also feel that the regulations are like too restrictive right now. Like,
That's another issue. Teams are not being, I don't think teams have the freedom to develop like how we had it earlier, right? So
yeah, yeah,
we don't see much, even in the upgrades, we don't see anything, I would say like anything, which will contribute towards the team improving the performance by a big margin or something.
yeah.
And we
Because I
don't
mean,
see that in,
the
yeah,
regulations they're all so like tight, right? I mean,
yeah,
this year even the floor, the new regulation, the floor kind of has a lot of limitations on what you can do with the floor, the limitation of what you can do with diffuser, with the front wing, rear wing, how much the DRS can open, like everything. I mean, it almost feels like a spec series right now, right? I mean, there's such less uh room to improve. So what happens? Whoever makes the best engine basically wins, right? I mean, the most you have is a team like in the new regulations, a team like Mercedes completely getting their aero wrong, and being all shocked Pikachu why the car is not going fast. But I mean, otherwise it's like I think we need I think we need looser regulations, and this might be unpopular among some viewers of our channel, but I think we need to get rid of the cost cap. Honestly,
yep, I agree. I mean, it's what is restricting the teams to, or maybe like
yeah,
the cost cap should be regulated for in such a way that teams should be allowed the freedom to develop to a certain extent. For like
right,
if they go up, I mean they should be given the chance to go above say 10 to 20% of the cost cap
yeah,
to start to develop their cars or some
yeah.
threshold
I
like
think
that.
yeah, the lower you are in the table, the more leeway you get because right now whatever 100 150 million teams get to spend. Say you have won the regulations, like say a Red Bull or a Ferrari or even a Mercedes, who are still the third or fourth best team. They don't need to put in as much effort in developing a car as say a Williams, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like Williams has rich investors, the investors have plenty of money, right? Now, if Williams wants to put in 250 million and develop a rocket, but they still can't, right? I mean, Williams has good
Yeah.
engineers, Williams Valves. Um, he has done a lot of good recruitment, but if they can spend the same amount of money as say a Red Bull or a Ferrari or a Mercedes, they're not getting anywhere near the top, right?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, I guess that's a ranting session for this week. Uh,
Yeah, I think there's gonna be more of this, because dusting of the season is gonna be a wash in terms of excitement on the track. So this is something we are gonna build upon. We're gonna have more constructive conversations on this and see.
yeah, because right now it almost
Yeah,
feels impossible, with the cost cap and the tires and all this stuff that, for example, 2005 and 2006, Renault, they came from nowhere. Nobody
yeah,
expected Fernando and Renault to win a championship. It was all between Schumacher and Montoya and Kimi Raikkonen at the front, and those basically three teams, right? McLaren, Williams, and Ferrari. Nobody
yeah.
expected Renault to come from nowhere and start winning races, and they did. And that was because the sport was more open. Or 2009, when Ross Brawn bought a team for £1 and developed a rocket, right, out of nowhere, and Braun, won the title. I really don't see. Do you see Kick Sauber doing that next year? I don't think so.
No chance.
Or even Audi for that matter. Do you think Audi is going to win? I mean, if they can't spend more than 150 million, what are they going to do? I think they're just going to remain at the bottom.
Yeah, I mean that's the reason Williams have been at the bottom of the F1 leaderboard for so long now. I mean, in between they had a few seasons with Bottas and Massa, and like where they finished on the podiums and all that. But it was just like 1 or 2 seasons, and then they're back at the bottom.
Yeah.
So
And now the cost cap, it feels like they'll never come up again.
yeah,
Yeah.
yep. I think
What
that's
do
a
you think?
rant for this race.
Is there anything else we can think about to
I
quote
think
unquote
this is
fix?
going to be conversations over the next few races. So we're going to come up with more ideas and see, how changes can happen in the future.
Right. All right, fellas. That's about it for your Suzuka preview. We'll be back next week before Shanghai. I mean, at this point, we're just waiting for off the track drama. I don't know. Maybe Helmut Marko lose his shit at Christian Horner again, and
Yeah,
Red
I
Bull
want
break.
some Red Bull drama, man. Come on, Red Bull, do something silly. Come on,
Or even if, or even if Toto Wolff get pissed off and walks out of the team. I don't know, man. We need some drama. Uh, or kicks
some
off with
driver
this show.
movement. Get me Carlos Sainz news.
Yeah, we want to be the smooth operator on the channel again.
Yep,
All right, guys. We'll see you in a week. Hopefully, we'll be back with that optimism. But yeah, we'll see what happens. Hopefully, we get some drama. That's the only thing keeping us in this season.
yep. Till the next one.
All right, guys. See ya.